Welcome everybody to I'll Be Right Back, the show where we take a look at a horror movie. And there's a new Godzilla movie out, Peter. Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. We thought we would do a Godzilla movie for this. And we thought, which Godzilla movie? So we decided to let the people decide, and they decided they hate us. So we're watching Godzilla 1998. For a very long time, this was the only Godzilla thing I had seen. And I remember quite liking it. Going back to it now, yikes.
I've come into this very much on the back of some of the comments you've made previously, and I think you want me to hate this. I'm not going to appease you, James. This is a fun movie. This is a good jaunt. You can argue with us and say it's not Godzilla per se, and I would agree with that. But this is a decent Hollywood blockbuster movie. Decent monster, decent cast, and some decent action. I think you're being too harsh on this movie.
I think it starts strong, but there was a point where the movie felt like it was almost over. I looked at the runtime and there was still like an hour, 30 minutes left. I was like, what could possibly happen in this?
Good value for money. Cinema tickets are not cheap, James. I want to go and I want to get my value sitting on my arse and eating popcorn and nachos. And that's what you get with this movie. You get big monsters, silly human characters, some little baby dinosaurs which are cute, and you know, some action scenes. Shit military. Did you notice that not one of the helicopter missiles seem to hit Godzilla until the very end?
They do more damage to the city than Godzilla.
Americans, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? They're not good at hitting the target. If you had British military in there, film would have been over in 10 minutes.
Of course, sorted. Absolutely, yeah. A lot of background about this movie, Peter. So it's directed by Roland Emmerich, who was just coming off of Independence Day. He'd done Stargate previously as well. An American version of Godzilla had been in the works for a while, so Toho agreed in 1992 to license the character to Sony after rejecting producer Henry G. Saperstein for over 10 years. Toho sent a 4-page document detailing how the character should be treated, including physical requirements like how many fingers and toes he must have, not allowing him to eat people, and not allowing him to die in the movie. So I think they just threw that in the bin pretty much immediately.
Scrap that. Yeah, scrap that.
In 1994, Speed director Jan de Bont signed on to direct. His version changed Godzilla's origin to an Atlantean creature, and the film would have featured him battling an alien creature called the Griffin.
Yeah, it sounds shit.
It could have been cool. I don't know if he could have done it on this budget. Not even the budget, but like it wouldn't have looked good, you know?
The problem is, it's a bit like when we talk Marvel characters and things like that. People automatically get cheesed off with your movie if you change the origin or the background or the story, because it's no longer Godzilla. If it's an ancient Atlantean creature, that's not Godzilla, is it?
Just no like harrowing comparison to nuclear
exactly
warfare or whatever. Yeah. De Bont left the project after a budget dispute. Emmerich signed on in 1996 in the lead up to Independence Day's release on the condition that he'd be allowed to discard the film script. And he had said, quote, "It had some really cool things in it, but it is something I would never have done. The last half was like watching two creatures go at it. I simply don't like that." I don't know. I think that's why you kind of want to see these movies though, isn't it? To see two giant creatures battling, you know? I think a Godzilla movie where Godzilla is just wrecking shop can be good, and we've seen it very recently be incredible. You know, Godzilla -1, Godzilla's the bad guy in that. So I don't necessarily think Godzilla needs to be like the savior of humanity, you know?
This movie felt very much like he was just an animal wandering around looking for some place to lay his eggs. He wasn't a goodie or a baddie. He was just a force of nature for me.
Yeah, I think so. And there's that really nice moment where he kind of comes down to Nick, the lead character, and just kind of like curiously like almost sniffs at him, which I thought was nice. I feel like the tone of the movie is sort of all over the place. Like the music, it's very kind of like whimsical at moments where it feels like it shouldn't be, you know? And I don't think the music is actually bad. It just doesn't really suit what's happening on screen.
I enjoyed the soundtrack, but for me this really does kind of suffer. I don't think as badly as some of the Monsterverse movies, in that the human characters are the least interesting in any of it. Quite often they're just not likable. I didn't like the blonde lady reporter woman who screwed him over and all that kind of stuff. The French edition was a little bit weird, but worked.
I'll take John Reno any way I can get him though, do you know?
Absolutely, yeah, I quite liked him. Was it Hank Azaria?
Hank Azaria, who plays Animal, the cameraman,
Yeah, he was good in it. The mayor bloke just got right on me tits. He should have been eaten at some point at Storm.
Well, it's funny you say that. We'll come back to that point later on anyway. It's sort of two different clashing tones. Like you have the seriousness of like New York's being destroyed and like hundreds of people are dying, but then like they'll have a little whimsy joke about, oh, the guy doesn't see that Godzilla's right behind him, you know? It just feels very at odds with itself. But I think like the human characters, I think they're more memorable than you get in like the Monsterverse. I've always really liked Matthew Broderick. At times the acting can be a little ropey, but I think he's like he's charming.
Matthew Broderick's Matthew Broderick and everything he's in. I don't think his acting really changes. He's always just kind of this interesting guy. But I liked him in this. I felt a warmth towards him.
They really didn't try to make any of the women in this movie likable though, I feel. Audrey, who's the kind of lead love interest, I detested her. Absolutely absolutely hate it. Backstabs him the first second she gets. There's a moment, right, where there's a news report on the TV and it's talking about how hundreds of people are dead, thousands of people are injured, all the chaos. She sees Nick walk by on the screen and like this romantic music plays and she's like staring lovingly at the television. I'm like, are you a psychopath?
Yeah, it doesn't paint her in a good light at all. And she basically screws him over, doesn't she? I didn't particularly like her at all. I didn't like her friend either, if I'm honest.
No, I didn't like the friend just blaming Hank Azaria on everything bad that's happened. I didn't like the kind of inappropriate in the workplace boss that he has as well when he joins the team, who's just like, oh, the worm guy, you know. They really just didn't try with any of them, I feel. Godzilla himself, it's designed by Patrick Totopoulos, so I think that's who Nick is named after, I'm assuming.
Okay.
Totopoulos. Okay. The only note he received from Emmerich was it should be able to run fast. Now, I think the design is actually pretty good. I like the kind of iguana kind of look to it. I love the big boxy sort of head. I like that he's fast and mobile. Like, I think that's really cool. But it's not Godzilla, and I get why people freaked out about this.
If you're a fan of Godzilla, does this say Godzilla to you? Well, no, it doesn't. It's a big monster movie. It's a big kaiju movie. They could have made this movie without hanging it on the Godzilla franchise, I think. And people might have accepted it a bit more. I'm a Godzilla fan, but I'm not a Godzilla super fan. So actually, the changes in the design and the aesthetic of it didn't really bother me one way or the other.
Like I said, for me, this was Godzilla until I think the 2014 movie kind of came out and I like really got a proper look at what Godzilla is supposed to be like. And now, obviously, love that design. Iconic. This one never bothered me. I think it's a cool monster design, you know. I like the New York setting. I think that's a cool area to put him in. I don't really buy the whole, well, this is the only island in the world he can hide on. It's like, well, come on. You know, just because there's some tall buildings. Nobody saw him go underground.
Yeah, again, logically, that makes no sense. When you see the size of the creature, how is it hiding? How is it burrowing underground?
The best sequence of the movie for me is when he's stomping around New York and you see it like from the ground perspective. I think that's really cool. Like the way the tail is slamming into buildings was awesome, you know?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that bit.
I think there's some really strong imagery in this movie. So like the scene where the guy is fishing, he's kind of swimming towards the deck and the deck is kind of blowing up behind him. I thought was really cool.
I like that scene. I remember liking that scene. Again, just to be a grumpy old fart, the CGI really struck us when I rewatched it.
It's not aged very well, has it?
It's not, no. But in concept, a great scene.
The kind of zoom out on the footprint where it's like you're standing in it. I thought that was great. The hole in the building that they find.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Very cool kind of piece of imagery as well. So like there's good stuff in this. I don't hate this movie. I actually think this is like entertaining. Like I'd rather watch this again than some other Godzilla stuff I've seen.
I quite like the bit as well when they're in the kind of the underground in the sewers and you see Godzilla kind of hunched down and crawling around and stuff. That looked pretty cool. Like I enjoyed that bit of it.
That did give us, I think, the worst moment of CG in the movie though, where the two soldiers are walking up. Oh, it's a dead end, and then the eye comes out and it's just
dreadful,
awful, yeah. So bad. And then the movie just sort of turns into Jurassic Park in the kind of last act.
It's absolutely Jurassic Park, Velociraptors, lots of them kind of thing. At that point, you kind of, for me, lose the fact that this is a Godzilla movie because it seems to really focus on that element more than the big monster. It's lots of little monsters running around, you know?
I don't think you need it. The movie's long enough as is. I think you could have cut all of that out. Maybe had the reveal of the egg at the end and that would be it.
But I suppose in reality, you know, that smaller dinosaur threat gives the human characters something better to work off because there's only so much running from a giant monster that can do.
There's some tension there, I think, where they're going through doors and the things are there, you know, and I think it is like a shocking moment where they would open a door and there's like literally 100 of them, you know. It's quite like, oh, we're screwed kind of moments. I think the movie really wastes its ending. Godzilla dies. It feels like it's going to be this kind of melancholy, what have we done kind of moment where he's whimpering and the heartbeat is kind of getting slower and slower, and it's really beautifully done, like a King Kong ending, you know, the "'twas beauty killed the beast," and then it dies and it just undercuts it by everybody cheering and the triumphant music kicking in. It's like, yeah, kick ass, we killed it, you know. And I just feel like that sort of wasted what could have been a good ending.
I guess it depends how you read it, but I read that as, you know, the Matthew Broderick character was recognizing we've killed a unique animal here. So you've got his passion and upset at that. And then you've got the stupidity of the general public and the military and whatnot who are just, yay, we've killed a big monster. It's a good analogy for the fact that we're just racing into, you know, climate disaster and all that kind of stuff, and we don't care really.
But I don't think that's what we get in the movie because of the way the bombastic music is playing, the walk off into the sunset kind of bit. I think if it had been somber for him, the way it was in the rain and everything, I think that would have been a really cool ending.
Rain's a lot in this movie, doesn't it?
The final shot of the movie, so so ropey. Just have the egg crack and cut to black. Like, you didn't need to have the thing pop out on the screen. I just think it looked terrible.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I get the concept, I get the idea. This is the, we'll come back for a sequel and this is when you Godzilla or whatever. You should have just seen the egg and that would have been enough.
So a little bit of trivia about the movie, Peter. Totopoulos created 4 concept art pieces and a 2-foot-tall maquette for a meeting with Toho. When they unveiled Totopoulos' artwork and maquette, Emmerich recalled, quote, "They were speechless. They stared at it and there was silence for a couple of minutes. And then they said, 'Could you come back tomorrow?' I thought for sure we didn't have the movie then." Tomiyama later recalled that it was just so different that we realized we couldn't just make small adjustments. So they just kind of had to go, well, fuck it, it's too late now, we need to just go ahead with it. The failure of the film's extravagant toy line led to the bankruptcy of Trendmasters in 2002.
There's an absolutely amazing, almost like a glove puppet of Godzilla with arms and a movable jaw, which fits over practically your entire arm, which is stunning. Really, really like that toy.
Yeah, I think they were really banking on this being like another Titanic kind of success, and it didn't. Godzilla's atomic breath doesn't feature in the film, however, there was a sort of replacement. There was originally going to be like a super breath, so it was going to be like Superman, like he blows really hard, and there is kind of a moment in the movie where he like kind of roars and it kind of knocks cars over and stuff. They removed it from the movie just because of fan backlash. I don't know why they don't do atomic breath in this. Like,
I'm surprised they kept that out, to be honest, because that's kind of a classic Zilla thing, isn't it?
yeah, and I think that would have been a really cool end of movie shock moment of like, oh crap, he's powered up, and maybe he shoots at the cab or something,
I was going to say, I guess the only thing is he usually uses that on the big kaiju enemies, doesn't he? He's not really going out of his way to kill any soldiers in this. He just runs around a lot, really.
Several Simpsons actors appear in the film, including Hank Azaria as Animal, Harry Shearer as news anchor Charles Kamen, and Nancy Cartwright as Kamen's assistant. So you know the bit where she's like, oh, there's your story behind you. That's, yeah, Nancy Cartwright, who plays Bart Simpson. And lastly, Mayor Ebert and his assistant Gene are based on film reviewers Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel in retaliation for their negative reviews of Stargate and Independence Day. Siskel stated in his review, quote, "Why place us in the movie if you aren't going to have us be eaten or squashed by the monster?" So it's like,
absolutely agree with them. And their characters were just stupid as well. The whole sweets kind of thing about it, that was a bit silly.
He's absolutely right though. It was supposed to be a dig at them, but they're just characters in the movie. Like, they're no more incompetent than the army generals or anyone else in the movie. There was a sequel planned. It was going to involve the surviving offspring battling a giant bee, which was going to be named the Queen Bitch. I can hear that coming out of Matthew Broderick's mouth, like the Queen Bitch.
It wasn't really going to be called the Queen Bitch.
That was what they were going to call it in the movie, yeah.
The Queen Bitch.
I assume they would have had a name in the movie for it, and then its characters just call it Queen Bitch. So it's going to take place in Sydney. The studio abandoned the sequel plans due to a lack of enthusiasm from fans, audiences, theatre owners, and licensees, and Emmerich and Devlin left due to budget disputes. There was then an animated series, so I remember seeing this when I was a kid. This is actually quite well liked, I believe.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
He actually fights other kaiju. It sort of retcons the ending where Nick is there, and then it imprints on him, so it's like he can control him. I think they bring back the Godzilla that dies in this, comes back as like a cyber Godzilla or something like that.
I seem to remember them being like, there was like a military team with some acronym or whatever you call it.
Yeah, like Hack or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So apparently quite good. I vaguely remember watching it as a kid, but I don't remember what I thought of it. This character has been sort of rebranded by Toho, so it's no longer called Godzilla. They refer to it as Zilla because the god is not there anymore. And he's actually appeared in a few other things, so most notably Godzilla Final Wars, where he shows up and normal Godzilla kills him like immediately. I think he throws him and spears him on like the Sydney Arbor house. And he's appeared in a couple of video games, I think, as well. I like the idea that this is like another kaiju, like not Godzilla, it's just a separate kaiju. I think that kind of works, you know?
That works. Yeah, I like that.
I'd like to see this version. I think it'd be cool to throw him in one of the newer ones. Like, not as the main antagonist or anything, but just like, you know, a little fight scene would be cool.
A nod to him at some point.
So, any final thoughts on Godzilla?
For me, this is an okay movie. It's a movie of its time. It's got some decent action in it. The characters are okay. Special effects are okay if I base it on the time it was made. I did quite like the design of Godzilla. I did like the action. I did like the little Godzilla babies at the end, I guess. I don't think this is worthy of the negativity it seems to get. It's no better or worse than some of the Monsterverse movies in terms of my like or dislike for the characters, I don't think.
I know I've been sort of slagging the movie off, but I think it's fairly entertaining. I would say it's definitely more entertaining than some of those like consistently throughout. I don't hate it. It's definitely not as bad as everybody's saying it is.
For Matthew Broderick, he's got a real kind of hang up about the fact that he thinks he killed this movie, killed the franchise, that his performance in it pulled it down and stuff like Clooney did with the Batman franchise. As an actor, a massive multi-million-pound property like this, and it gets slagged off and destroyed, you must feel that. You must
100%, because when you're signing the dotted line on a trilogy of of these movies. You're thinking this is gonna be, you're gonna be the biggest star in the world after it, and then that doesn't happen, you know. I imagine that's good. But yeah, it's not as bad as everyone says it is. I think it's fun throughout. There's a lot of silliness, but it's decent, you know. So is this better than Willy's Wonderland?
I'm going to pitch a movie to you. Yeah?
Giant Nick Cage, is it? Nick Cage storms through New York
absolutely.
City.
Matthew Broderick hunting a giant naked Nick Cage. That would be a seat filler, wouldn't it?
I mean, once you say naked Nick Cage, I'm there.
Just imagine how big his ding dong would be flopping around.
Smacking into buildings and everything.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And that's I'll Be Right Back on Godzilla. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the channel where we do One Good Scare live every second Friday. And we'll be right back next time with...
There are monsters who dwell in our nightmares. Creatures of unspeakable horror, plotting to destroy mankind. But in this world, there are warriors who have the courage to confront this evil. Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Because this time, the monsters are real.
Never, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.